welcome back to another long overdue episode of Hail Yes, a Michigan football and basketball podcast by the Detroit Free Press. I am Andrew Burkle, of course, joined by our Michigan beat writer, Tony Garcia. Tony, it's been a couple weeks since we've talked on the podcast. A few things have happened. Michigan has a new football coach. Basketball team has continued to roll for the most part. Transfers have come in, transfers have gone out. But yeah, it's been a busy few weeks to say the least, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask if we missed anything. It's funny. It's only been like 2.5 weeks maybe since we spoke, maybe 3. I mean, there was the holiday break in there, which neither of us really got, but we figured listeners did. And so there's that. Then travel down to Orlando, then back here, a couple hoops games, got Penn State, USC, Penn State, Wisconsin. But it feels like a lifetime in terms of all the things that have happened in this program. The coaching staff is completely remade. The roster is largely remade or somewhat largely remade, but Michigan's also done a great job with some retentions and the new staff. I mean, I think we should probably mention his name, right? Kyle Whittingham from Utah. He is the new coach.
You've heard?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I don't know if that's breaking news anymore, but he hit the ground running. His main goal was player retention. I guess we'll get into that in a little bit about some of the key players he kept around. Next was rounding out a staff, which also meant essentially just poaching the majority of Utah's staff. But hey, all's fair in love war in college football. And then around that, it's been adding some transfer portal players, which was a little slow to start. There was a lot of concern on message boards and in Twitter mentions and things like that. But Michigan is really starting to pick up. They seem to be putting a lot of things together here. But yeah, an unbelievably busy 3 weeks in the Michigan football program.
And not just for us, but for people following the team and the school and all the different sports as well. I mean,
oh yeah.
Michigan is a hockey team that a lot of people care about still, right? Like we can't even begin to touch that and everything going on there as well. So it's been crazy, and we didn't want to spend this whole episode just like recapping every single thing that's happened. So we want to move things forward while obviously, of course, mentioning Kyle Whittingham took over. Was first announced on December 26th and then was introduced in the Orlando ballroom on the 28th. And it's just, the whole thing has been surreal, right? You know, right down to when Sharon was fired, via an email, then arrested shortly after, in everything that came out. One of them being your very in-depth story that, super proud of that ran on freep.com. Check it out if you haven't already. And then right down to Whittingham getting introduced in this ballroom in Orlando. Like, it's just like none of the pomp and circumstance we're used to seeing. But since then, things have kind of settled down to a large degree. And this has to be the exact vision that Ward Manuel and whoever else was part of that hiring committee had when they landed on Whittingham as the guy to, again, not necessarily continue what they had going, but building off some of that infrastructure they did have, keeping some of those players they had. I mean, we can't forget, as messy as it was last year for Michigan, they went 9-3. So it's not going to take a lot around the edges to get this thing back rolling. And I think so far, if that was the plan, things seem to be going to plan.
That's what you're going to get with Kyle Whittingham, right? Is just stable, steady leader.
Competency. You were buying competency.
Yeah, you're buying competency. An adult in the room is the phrase that we've heard a lot of times. Someone who just knows his way around the college football landscape. I mean, was going to come in with a plan, right? I mean, we were meeting with him on December 28th. Then he goes on the broadcast on December 31st and he goes, I'm going to have 2 or 3 coaches retentions on staff. We're going to bring in 7 or 8 guys, and this will be done by the weekend. And sure enough, the next 48 hours, it was nonstop talking to people about, we were like, I guess now it's so old, but we were among the first to report that Jay Hill was going to be coming, that Tony Alford was retained, that Jason Beck was looking like he was going to be the OC, and all these things are what happened. And so it was just boom, boom, just like dominoes. These, we're not going to go through the whole staff. I could, but we won't. And so that was really important. And it was really something that I think is not overlooked, but can't be overstated, was the importance of Whittingham not coaching that bowl game for Utah, going out there, saying his goodbyes, telling the team he was taking the job at Michigan, then flying down to Orlando and immediately hitting the ground running with players, boosters, support staffers, everybody top to bottom, because there was no time to waste. There was no time to spare. I mean, Whittingham had had a pretty good idea of the coaches who he wanted to sort of bring in with him, but it's not like he's perfectly or terribly familiar with all the staffers in Ann Arbor. He knows a lot of them are good coaches, but he said it to us. He's like, this is big boy football. Like, these guys have been around the block before. They know how this is going to work. And so, I mean, the few he capped, they were the three. I don't know if we ever mentioned it on this podcast, on different radio shows and things that I've done in recent weeks as it was all unfolding. I guess by hook or by crook, maybe a lucky guess, Blind Squirrel gets a nut every once in a while. These were the three who I felt it made the most sense to keep. Is running backs coach Tony Alford, who is a stud. The best positional coach on the team the last two seasons really in Ann Arbor, and also his brother Aaron Alford, who passed away a little over a decade ago. He was on staff under Whittingham I think it was like 2011 range for like 3-4 years, and so they had a tie to the family. Actually, Max Alford, Tony's nephew, just committed to Michigan last night on Monday, so keeping it all in the family. And then Lou Esposito, who is an elite recruiter. Michigan's defensive line has been churning out NFL talent. Not quite the year they had hoped to have this past season, but they were replacing Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart. That's a lot to replace. And Michigan, they still have their own. And then Kerry Coombs, who was the final hire made by Sharon Moore, actually. He was hired as special teams coordinator in early December. His unit had a fabulous game in the Citrus Bowl loss to Texas after the group was a complete disaster this past season in the second year under J.B. Brown, who had to be let go. There was just no other way that was going to shake out. And so those are the familiar faces. And then it's just putting in some coaches around the edges. Brought his brother in, Freddie Whittingham to lead tight ends. Kyle did. He brought his son in, Alex Whittingham, to lead linebackers. And the last notable thing I will say about the staff is Coy Detmer Jr., who Michigan brought in as a quarterbacks coach. I know I said it wasn't going to go through the whole staff. Trust me, this is not the whole staff. These are just the sort of the main players and pieces to know. They brought Coy Detmer Jr. in as a quarterbacks coach. Michigan did not have a dedicated quarterbacks coach this past season, which we had known all year. I almost called him Kirk Campbell. Chip Lindsey was OC and the quarterbacks coach. Josh Synagoga, the analyst, was a player in that room, but there was no dedicated coach to the quarterback position. That will change this year, and the hope is that'll mean good things for the development of Bryce Underwood.
Yeah, I saw Kyle Whittingham was, first of all, he's been making the rounds, man. He's been on about every show you can imagine. And he most recently, or not, I guess not most recently, I don't know what he's done since, but I saw he was also on Urban Meyer's podcast. And Whittingham is, he's been pretty PC, politically correct. He hasn't been calling out a lot of things, but he kind of threw it out there. It was a little shady, a little bit of shady. He's like, yeah, we're going to have a quarterback coach for Bryce Underwood this year. When he was asked about him by Urban, he's like, which to my understanding, which he clearly knew, they didn't have a quarterback coach for Underwood last year. So that should make a big difference alone. It was like a little bit of shade from him, I thought, if you read between the lines. And that was something we were hearing buzz about, the lack of a QB coach before anything happened with Sharon. So certainly an easy thing to put a bow on, tie it up, and be like, all right, we're done with that. Let's see what this basic adjustment can do. But I want to ask you about staff before we move on to some of the players and some of the other turnover. What kind of culture shock might be too strong of a word, but we saw this just up the road in East Lansing. What happens when you import almost an entire staff from an entirely different part of the country, and Jonathan Smith from Oregon State? Do you think there's going to be any learning curve when you're going from Sharon Moore, who is 39, young, a lot of energy, to Kyle Whittingham, who's in his late 60s, is from Utah. All of his staff is from Utah. I mean, you don't have to say too much about it. That's just two entirely different cultures, right? Is that something you're going to be watching this year? Or so far, do you think based on retainment, it's not going to be that big of a story? Or is that something we're going to find out later down the line?
They don't call Ann Arbor Mormon Midwest? Is that not what's going on here?
No, not to my knowledge.
Yeah, no. Well, it's going to be now. Get ready to learn the LDS or whatever it is. But no, I don't see it being a massive deal. Obviously, there will be some learning curve here and there in various areas, but I think holding on to a few pieces of the staff who are among the best on all three units, right? You got an offensive guy, a defensive guy, the special teams guy. I guess Kerry Coombs really was not very familiar with Ann Arbor. Let's be frank. He'd been around for a month, but he's from Ohio. He made his inroads. He was a longtime Ohio State guy, which isn't going to curry you a lot of favor in Ann Arbor, but you're very familiar with this recruiting territory with the Midwest. He previously coached high schools, so he understands that sort of level and dynamic. Alfred, also from Ohio State, ironically, is fantastic. And we talked about Esposito. So just some familiarity with those guys. And then there's other guys on staff like Jim Harding, the offensive line coach. He used to coach in Troy, at Troy Athens High School. He was a former head coach. His wife is from the area. So there's, a little bit of knowledge and familiarity with Southeastern Michigan. Marquise Hagans, who comes from Penn State as the assistant wide receivers coach. There is another Big Ten tie, right? So it's not a ton, but there's little pieces of people who have been around the block in various Big Ten stops or with Midwest ties. But also, I just think that if you are, and one of the things Kyle Whittingham said that I think plays into this is he said, "You will become us. We will not become you." So I guess you'll have to put a pin in that to see if that means he's not going to adapt to like the way Michigan wants to do things. But I think stylistically, other than the fact that it's a power spread, Whittingham still wants to run the football, right? He still wants to be, a really tough team. This is a lot more steak than sizzle as opposed to the concern when it's the other way around. This is meat and potatoes, all the cliches you want to throw out there about just a tough, grinded out football team. Like Utah was unbelievably consistent year in, year out. Their talent might vary because it was tough to get a ton of talent in to Utah all the time, but you knew the style of fight you were getting into when you were going to play Utah. And I think that's what he wants to bring to Ann Arbor. It's similar to what Michigan has historically had. So I don't see it as being some huge, like in East Lansing, it felt like Jonathan Smith never embraced there seems to be a way that Michigan State coaches have to win. And I don't know that he embraced that. I think there are multiple ways that Michigan coaches can win. And the way that Kyle Whittingham is coming in appears to fall in line with one of those various styles. So the long answer is I'm not concerned about Whittingham's fit here.
Yeah, I would push back slightly. That just, the most successful coaches at Michigan have basically in our lifetime have been Lloyd Carr and Jim Harbaugh, and they've played very similar styles of football as far as just like ground and pound, pro style. And then you had the years in between with Rich Rod and Brady Hoke where they were running more of a spread. So, we'll see, right? But Jason Beck has kind of evolved his offense. That people, I'm sure you've heard of it, but what was it? Number 2 in the nation last year. So
number two in rushing, number 1 in yards per carry, top 5 in total offense, top 6
total offense.
No,
it wasn't just the ground. And so if you want to talk about Whittingham's ability to adapt, this was it's similar to a less degree what Alabama and Nick Saban, where they were, time of possession, we're going to play our defense. And then Nick Saban looked around at college football and was like, hold on, guys, I think we might have to open this offense up a little bit. He brings in Lane Kiffin, and Alabama's been an offense first team for most seasons ever since, right? Utah, they went 5-7, I believe, in 2023 or 2024, right? And then last year, they completely opened things up and ended up being one of the top offenses in the country. So this is the guy who's able to evolve. And clearly, if he wanted to or just wanted to retire and just be done with it, didn't have the energy, he would have just gone quietly into retirement, right? But so a lot of the questions as far as future I feel like are answering themselves to a certain degree, right?
Yeah. And also just a quick thought about the Rich Rod and the Brady Hoke stuff. This is the era of the transfer portal, right? You can immediately get players to fit your style of roster. Those guys, back in those days, it took years to rebuild the program, especially guys who the most stark one was going from Lloyd Carr to Rich Rodriguez. When all these guys are recruited to do one thing, Rich Rod comes in and does something entirely different. And then you have to then you got to go through the growing pains of playing tons of freshmen, of, or if you're able to convince a handful of players, a small handful of players to transfer, sit out a year and then join. But now, I mean, and I guess this might be a good time to get into it. I don't know if you want to look at the guys that they are bringing in, the guys that they were able to keep. A lot of this seems to make sense. And it seems like they went offense first, just from the way that things are sort of landing, or offense primarily. I mean, there's going to be a good amount of talent here, especially on this offense. If they can, I got a little bit of concern about the front seven on defense, and maybe we'll get to that later, but they are bringing in a lot, players they're familiar with, players whose style they want, and they were able to retain, let's just say it quickly. Bryce Underwood, Jordan Marshall, he has not announced it, but I have been told for more than a week now, Andrew Marsh has reached a new deal. He will be in Ann Arbor this season. Even when they just signed another wide receiver, who we're going to mention in 1 second, from Texas, he was mentioning, messaging him or quote sharing his story on Instagram, whatever, and saying let's go, let's do this, whatever. And so, a ton of key people, not to mention the whole offensive line, is coming back, essentially the entire offensive line. And we can get into those who they're adding, but I think I just wanted to say it's not quite the same as just because it's spread, and I think they can still be really good.
And you're right to point that out. I was just saying from a style perspective. You said, one style and able to win. I think that this style of ground and pound has historically been what's worked for Michigan. And that's why it makes sense with who they landed on and Whittingham. But yeah, it's been no doubt. You've seen why there's an advantage to hiring a coach who has been established at a program. Obviously Kirk Cignetti at James Madison. Everyone points to that as the layup, but already in the first few, we'll call it a week or two, Michigan has been able to add around the edges to what they already had by picking off some of the Utah players and coaches. And man, just real quick, I wanted you to go to the transfer portal, guys, after this, but this cannot have gone much worse for Utah, who seemingly wanted to move on and just take the next step and keep everything they had rolling via the players. And they didn't want to lose all those guys. Whenever Whittingham decided to retire, they wanted to keep the staff in place. And basically everyone except for Whittingham's, number 2 has now left. This has not gone well for them. So it's been a weird transition period for them for sure, but it's allowed Michigan to start to scoop up some of the names and players at positions of need. So it couldn't have worked out much better for Michigan from that perspective.
And it makes a ton of sense, right? Whittingham is the name who a lot of these guys played for, or coached under, I should say, and the reason they were on staff. Now he's going to a bigger brand. He's trying to bring in his guys, and then so they're going to follow him, right? And it's a domino effect. Whittingham leaves, the coaches follow, and then he talked about he's like we're not going to tamper with guys. That he's like, I'm not into that. He's like, but if guys are in the portal, as soon as they're in the portal, that's fair game for us. And a number of key Utah players have since entered the portal. Some are already in the fold in Ann Arbor. Others, I expect, will be shortly. And so, if combine the Michigan and Utah rosters and coaching staffs, and you can get a pretty good team, right? And they're all combining in Ann Arbor.
All right, run through some of these names for me here quickly. Obviously, John Henry Daly, I think, is the lead, right? The number one guy that they've landed, the defensive end from Utah, who had a big year last year but got hurt. But who are some of the other big names that Michigan fans should know coming in from the outside?
Yeah, no, certainly him. Certainly the big name in terms of production. He led the nation. It was 17.5 tackles for loss. I think he finished with 11.5 sacks, and he missed the final game and only played in most of 11 games. He played the first 10, then got hurt in the 11th. That's the concern. People are calling it a lower body injury. A lot of people are saying it's an Achilles. So it's unclear how he will sort of respond. But he has said that he will be back in time for fall camp, and he thinks he will return to 100%. But outside of John Henry Daly, there is another wide receiver, or another Utah player, I should say, who is a wide receiver, JJ Buchanan. He was originally a tight end. Then he just got full-time switched to wide receiver. When Michigan announced his graphic, it did say wide receiver on the recruiting graphic. So it appears he will be in Micah Simon's room. I think he was number 1. It might have just been among freshmen. like, I'm not saying only, but among freshmen in like contested catch rate. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but I think it was 26 grabs, 427 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Those all would have ranked second or third on Michigan last year, or first. The touchdowns would have led the team in receiving touchdowns. So that's a huge addition. Then there's Jamie French. French spelled French. I will misspell that in some story sometime, so apologies in advance. But he previously played for Texas this year. Didn't see a ton of time. I mean, almost none at all, frankly. He had 1 catch for 6 yards, but this was a high 4-star recruit. He was a top 100 player coming out of high school in Florida, I believe it was, Jacksonville area, if I'm not mistaken. And so he comes with a lot of pedigree. That's another. I mean, Michigan needed to add to this wide receivers room, right? And now, if your top 3 is Andrew Marsh, JJ Buchanan, and Jamie French, that's the makings of a really good room, frankly, and not just like you got to squint your eyes to kind of see it, but like, no, those are good players. And then Travis Johnson, who's coming in. You got Jamar Browder coming back. Finally, this Michigan wide receiver room looks like what you feel a Michigan wide receiver room should look like. And I believe Andrew Marsh will finally get 1,000 yards this year and break a streak that's been over, I think it's now 13 years Michigan's gone without a 1,000-yard receiver. And then 2 other names quickly to keep an eye on. One more on the offensive side of the ball, Taylor Tatum, the running back from Oklahoma. He was the number 1 running back recruit in America in 2024, according to the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. He ran the ball 1 time this past year as he had some, I can't remember, I think hamstring, lower body, leg injury of some sort, but he joins the room for Michigan that not only brings back Jordan Marshall, but also brings in the number 1 running back in the nation this year in Savion Hyder. So those are 3 highly regarded running backs who will, I think it feels like Jordan Marshall will be the lead going into the year, and then Hyder and Tatum will sort of duke it out for that second spot. I mean, Tatum is more experienced, but Savion Hyder, man, I mean, he is unbelievably talented. So that'll be a tough battle for that RB2 spot. And then last but not least, I know you'd wanted me to talk about transfers coming in. This is not official as of 11 a.m. Tuesday, January 13th, when we are recording this podcast, but I would be shocked if it does not happen. Celesi Moa, who is an athlete, former top 50 freshman coming into this year's freshman class in the class of 2026. It's actually a really interesting story with Moa. Michigan, Utah, and Tennessee were his final 3. He took an official visit to Ann Arbor for the Michigan-Ohio State game. Then a few weeks later, ended up committing to Tennessee. Then, before signing day or on signing day, he flipped to Utah, in part because it felt more like a family atmosphere. Well, that's because his family, his uncle, Lewis Powell, the edge coach, was on staff in Utah. Where is he on staff now? In Ann Arbor. And so I would not be surprised at all. In fact, I would be surprised if it didn't happen. I would expect Celesi Moa to be coming to Ann Arbor. That's what I'm hearing in short order. And in case that's not enough, his younger brother, I think it's Alessi or Moa. I can't remember his younger brother's name. It's something like that. He just played for Michigan State. He too is in the transfer portal. So that might be a little bit of a sort of a 2-for-1 package deal in Ann Arbor. So, but Celesi, I mean, I think Celesi Moa, it sounds like will be recruited as a wide receiver as well. So all of a sudden, this room that was barren and bearish is now going to be struggling to find a way to put top 50, top 150, if you're talking about Travis Johnson, recruits on the field in their first year, which last year we saw, I mean, they couldn't get Andrew Marshall on the field fast enough. So those are the main guys that I'm looking at.
As always, I think it's worth a disclaimer. I would say that's for any team in the country. You know, the transfer portal can be a total dice roll, right? I mean, we're talking about Jamie French. He had 1 catch for 6 yards last year against, I believe it was Sam Houston State, right? So there's no guarantee with any of these transfer portal guys. You can only trust and look at the process, I think, and see like who they're identifying. And it seems like they have a plan. And in today's day and age, this isn't the NFL free agency or NBA free agency or MLB free agency where like, you know, these guys, there's stats on them that like, it's very much a crapshoot for what translates, what doesn't. So as always,
for most,
it should come with a bit of a disclaimer, you know?
It should.
Like
It should.
you
I feel like
gotta,
Daly, like a guy like that, he's proven, right?
100%.
I mean, 17 and a half tackles for loss, or JJ Buchanan, like even.
But he's coming off the injury, right? So again,
yeah, Daly is. Yep.
So
no, it's good to point out. It's good to point out. We can't crown them just yet.
No, because I would say the same for any school, because it's so easy to get caught up when you're like, it's like watching NFL free agency. You feel like, oh man, we signed this guy from Utah. We signed this guy from Oregon, signed this guy. They've been quiet, but you can go down and be like, oh wow, so and so got this guy, and it feels like you're getting a guarantee because you could point to. You can cherry pick these things, right? You can say if he did well last year in college, you look to his stats. If he didn't play much in 2025, but he played in 2024, you can look at those stats. If he was a high school, like I just see a lot of selective packaging and how this stuff is delivered. And I'm not just saying at Michigan. I'm saying like if you follow the transfer portal account on Twitter, or if you follow any of these reporters, it's like if you read between the lines, you can always tell when it's like, if they're going back to the high school recruiting rankings, it probably mean he didn't do much in college. And sometimes they'll go to the college rankings, but maybe it's just like there's a lot of, like I said, cherry picking for what these guys are coming in with. And you have to take every single one of these guys with a grain of salt, in my opinion, because they're just, roles at the craps table as well for some of these coaches too, hoping that most of them work out and not all of them will. They just know that, right? So with that said, Michigan's also losing some players via to the transfer portal, some known quantities as well, right? So run through those real quick, and then we'll take a break and talk some hoops. But there's some big names that Michigan's losing as well.
Yeah, they are. They are. Justice Haynes, the biggest one in the running back room. He was the lead back this past year, obviously. But I feel, and this is no knock against Justice, who was just electric. I feel like their running back room is still in perfectly good shape, and you could argue even stronger than this past year. You could imagine, but I don't know if I'd go that far. But I think their running back room is still in great shape. A big loss was Cole Sullivan, the linebacker who transferred to Oklahoma. I think who Michigan will see in week 2 of this year. He was almost a shoo-in for a starting linebacker spot, unless he met with coaches and just felt his sort of outside Viper role player didn't fit in the system that Jay Hill wants to run on defense. Outside of that, I think this is a really big loss, because Michigan also lost Ernest Hausman to retirement. They lost Jimmy Rolder to the NFL. They lost Jayshon Barham, who, yes, finished the season as edge, but started the season as linebacker, to the NFL. So that's all 4 of their 2 deep at the linebacker last year, right? So you got to replace all your first and second string in that room. And that's tough. That's a key position for Michigan. And Cole felt like the one guy who was going to come back. TJ Metcalf, who played safety, some nickel, led the defense in snaps. He's on the way out. Brandon Hillman, who was a safety, the hardest hitter, and he was probably top 4, top 5 in snaps. He's on the way out. And then just a big name, Ty Haywood, an offensive tackle who came in as a very high 4-star. At one point, he was a 5-star, but I think he finished as a top 4-star. He has since transferred to Alabama. But again, I think Michigan's going to be fine at the tackle position. They've got Blake Frazier coming back. They've got Andrew Sprague coming back. They've got Andrew Babalola coming back. And so those are going to be their top 3 rotational tackles. And then I think they were thinking about maybe moving Evan Link to a guard. I wonder if they don't have him at guard and tackle, like keeping his tackle feet wet still, so to speak. And
that phrase may have never been said before in the history of the English language. Keeping his tackle feet wet.
Well, keeping his feet wet at tackle, so to speak. I didn't need to throw the tackle first, but you know what I'm going for. And so they got plenty of depth at that position. So yes, some major losses, but I don't think it's anything that they have not, other than a linebacker, and they're still working on the secondary. It's nothing that they can't overcome, or it's not as if it won't be backfilled in other ways. But they got to get going on the defense.
Yeah, linebacker would, if I was a fan of a team, linebacker would be near the top of the list of positions I'd feel okay about replacing. You can kind of patch it together a bit more than, defensive line. Once you start seeing holes on the D line or the O line, in today's obviously football, you need quarterbacks, receivers, O-line, like those are the positions where it's like, ooh, you start sweating if you don't see him. Linebacker, especially at the University of Michigan, where they seem to just push out linebackers constantly. I think they'll find somebody, but yeah, certainly a position group to watch for sure. All right, we're going to come back with a ton more football talk in the next few weeks. Still, I mean, so much stuff we haven't even begun to look at, like Jason Beck's offense, Jay Hill's defense. So we have a lot we can still talk about with this football team. But I don't know if you've heard, Michigan has the number 2 or number 1 basketball team in the country, depending on where you look. So we got a lot to talk about with that team. So we'll get to them on the other side of the break. So stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. Michigan basketball, number 1 in all the metrics, number 1 in KenPom. I mean, they're still number 1 defense, number 7 in offense, what were you saying, 3 and 4 in the different polls, depending on where you look around. No matter where you look, Michigan is one of the top teams in the country in basketball still. And that is despite Michigan's, I guess, their worst week of the year, right? So they barely skated by against Penn State. Hey, a win is a win in the Big Ten. It was the first time they looked semi-beatable. And then on Saturday, Wisconsin actually got them. It doesn't go without saying that Wisconsin shot the crap out of the ball. They had 15 three-pointers, 45% from threes from the game, 50% from the field, along with 18 free throws. I mean, that is like efficiency 101 right there against a team that has been a defensive nightmare for every team they've faced up to this point. So for the first time, Michigan looks, like I said, beatable from this planet, not one of the great teams in college basketball history. And it took a Herculean shooting effort because you just can't get stuff inside against this Michigan defense. So I'm guessing your level of concern is pretty low. But what was your takeaway from this last week for Michigan basketball?
It was exactly what you just said. And I never thought, and I'd been writing for the last couple of weeks, like they're not just always going to beat teams by 30 and 40, right? Like there will be days where they're going to have to grind out a win, one that you don't expect. This was not the one. I think I picked them to win by like 18 or something. But you don't expect Wisconsin to open the second half shooting 9 of 9 from the field, 7 of 7 from 3, and scoring 25 points in 5 minutes. I mean, that just changes the entire calculation, right? But yeah, I think it also exposed some weaknesses that Michigan has, particularly stretch bigs who can shoot. I think Ivan Juric showed this with Penn State earlier in the week, last Tuesday, when he scored 20, and then that Alexis Bieliauskas, I think is how you say his name. I mean, with just a career day for Wisconsin, he was 8 of 27 shooting from 3 in his career, and he drilled 5 threes. He took 10 tries. He went 5 for 10. And then Nate Winter. Why am I blanking on Nolan Winter? Thank you, Nolan Winter. I was like, why do I not know his name? Nolan Winter hit 3 of his own. So I mean, you got 24 points in 3-pointers from 7-footers. Right? Like, so that's just a tough recipe. And then Michigan was sort of, I felt they were overcompensating, and they're starting going over screens a little more instead of that drop coverage clearly wasn't working. So you had to change something. But as soon as you're fighting over these screens, then these guards are just taking you off the bounce, right? They're just turning the corner on you. And whether it was John Blackwell or, goodness, his name is escaping me. He scored 22 points. He used to play for Dusty. It was the other guard. Thank you, Nick Boyd. I mean, who was the lefty, and he was finishing in the paint and traffic. They were just getting taken downhill. They just didn't have a lot of answers defensively, and still they were in it the whole way, right? I mean, now they needed Wisconsin to miss some front ends of 1-and-1s to sort of stay in it for those final few minutes, but that happens all the time, and so not a good week. Dusty had said afterwards that the practice they felt they hadn't played good their last 4 games, dating back to the last game of 25. Felt their practice habits had sort of slipped a little bit. And I don't know if he would say like complacency set in, but I mean, it's just hard to keep that fire going day in, day out. It's a long season. You're not going to play your best every day. And Michigan got. And so, but I mean, you asked my concern level. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say somewhere between 1.5 and 2. So it's not absolutely nothing, but it's very close to that.
Yeah. And the schedule sets up pretty well still. In a way, I think this is going to be, you figure assuming once Michigan came back down to earth and wasn't beating USC by 30 and Maryland by 20 and every other team on their schedule by 40, that they were going to get got at one of these spots. So a little wake-up call before a West Coast trip, build some confidence against Washington and Oregon if you can get wins in those games. And then you come home to 3 straight home games against Ohio State, Nebraska, and Michigan State. So that's, you better be playing pretty well by the time you get to the Nebraska-Michigan State stretch because, I got 3 straight home games against Indiana, Ohio State, then Nebraska, and then on the road to Michigan State. So things are heating up here, but you do have 3 straight home games coming off this road trip. So this is possibly good for Michigan long-term. In my opinion, you're not going to beat everybody by a million every single game. So maybe this wake-up call as you go out west, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it does take them maybe out of some of this all-time team comparisons because that was the company they were living in, right? Holy cow, we can't even quantify what they're doing. And now they just look like maybe one of the 4 or 5 best teams who could win the national championship. And that's still not bad company to be in.
Yeah. And here's something I wanted to point out. I wrote a story about it on Freep.com. There's something about Michigan basketball. It's still, the returns are still early under Dusty May. But when they go for these, whether it's away or neutral site situations, where it's a multiple stop situation. And what I mean by that is last year's trip to the West Coast to LA where they got UCLA and USC. They swept it. Last year, they went to Fort Myers, Virginia Tech, Xavier, swept them. Then they go to Indy for the Big Ten tournament, Maryland, Purdue, Wisconsin, swept them. Then they go to Denver for the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament, and they got Long Beach, whatever that team was. Who was it? The Aztec? Who they play in the first round? That crazy team. It was like Long Beach State or something. I don't know why I can't remember, but Texas A&M and that team that had all that would spread you out and they never turned the ball over. I'm giving research a little bit of time to get on this here, but in any event, they won both those games and
UC San Diego.
UC San Diego. I was like San Diego State. I'm like Long Beach State. No. Yeah, UC San Diego. Goodness gracious. Okay, but point remains, they swept that. Then this year they go to Vegas and Gonzaga, Auburn, San Diego State. There was San Diego State. Swept them, right? So, I mean, when they are in one site away from Ann Arbor for a few days at a time, they kind of roll teams, or at least they win a lot. And so I think there might be something to that, just getting away, like bubbling yourself, hunkering down together as a group, spending a little more time together. So Washington, Oregon coming up this week. Washington on Wednesday the 14th, Oregon on Saturday the 17th. It is. Maybe the 18th. My dates are running together. Let's see. It is Saturday the 17th. Yes. Yep, Saturday the 17th. Yes. NBC, I believe. And so maybe Michigan can find a little bit of its mojo, I guess, is the point in the Pacific Northwest. Sounds like they're going to do a few things together as a team, some dinners and maybe a few activities. I will be going there. I will be bothering them to see if I can tag along to anything. Not in like an I want to play with you too sort of way, but this is where this is where you get a lot of good color. This is where you can get some real insight into these teams, and I believe there's only one other reporter who covers the team who is going out there as well. Stay tuned to Freep.com if you want actual boots on the ground from Seattle, from Eugene, hoping to go to a practice. That's a little up in the air, but I will be speaking with I believe 3 pretty key players who you all know about, and I have a story in mind about some of the big men who've come into the program, and then we'll be meeting with Dusty on the West Coast as well. Last year, if you recall, I don't know if anybody recalls, we were able to put together a really interesting and I think insightful piece on Vlad Golden and his journey from Russia to Connecticut to Texas Tech to Florida to Ann Arbor, and that came together on the West Coast trip in LA where you just have a little bit more time. Like the players aren't all running to and from class and weight room and their girlfriends and their lives at home, which they had the right to do. But everyone is siloed in one place of the country. You're there. It's a little harder for the team to keep you away, especially when you're pester them as much as I do. But the staff is great. The players are great. So I don't think they mind too much. So that was a little bit of inside baseball as far as this West Coast trip.
Well, mostly I'm glad to hear that you approve of the Michigan basketball players having girlfriends and social lives outside of basketball. It's good to hear that you sign off. I'm glad to hear that.
They are allowed to do that. Now, what I will say, proposing to your girlfriend and right after losing to Michigan State, I was fine with it for Vlad because I knew Vlad and he was a great dude. Optically, not the best look. So just
actually
try
good
to pick.
Good note.
Try to pick not immediately after losing to your rival to propose on the court. But short of that, I'm all for it. I'm all for these players having lives. Namari, who I don't want to say one of my favorites, but I really, really like Namari. He got engaged this offseason. He did it it was somewhere tropical. I think it was Aruba. Fantastic. Fabulous. Job well done.
No notes.
So I got to ask him about the wedding planning that's coming.
I got nervous for a second there when I said, I'm glad you approve of the players having girlfriends. And you go, I will say, I'm like, whoa, where are we going with this? On that note, I think we should probably wrap up here. Lots of good college basketball to come. Like we mentioned, so much more football still to discuss. We're going to keep it balanced. In years past, it kind of leaned heavy into basketball, but those years did not have this crazy offseason for Michigan football. So we know that you guys still want to get to know the players, get to know the new schemes, get to know what the heck is going on, transfer portals. People are still moving. Did you hear that there was like over 5,000 players in the transfer portal for football? I mean,
yeah, wasn't it like 30% of players or something, or it might have been even more than that.
And people were throwing out all kinds of figures, right? Like enough to fill out every roster in the Big Ten and SEC combined. I think I heard at one point, like people were really trying to quantify it. It's just absurd amount of turnover in this sport. So trust us, like we're trying to follow along. So I can't even imagine it's our job to try to know what's going on to a certain degree with these transfers. It's not our only job, but it's one of our jobs to know what's going on. So we can't even imagine if you're just, working your 9 to 5 and love Michigan sports, if trying to like follow this roller coaster up and down and who these people are. So we're trying to do that for you guys as well. So check out freep.com for that. And as always, thank you to Nicole Avery Nichols, who makes this all possible. Thank you to Robin Chan, who edits the podcast. And thank you to our acting sports editor, Ryan Ford, who does a fantastic job keeping this department all together. So with that, we'll talk to you guys soon. Appreciate you listening. And enjoy the hoops.